Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I'm Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about the Umbrella Academy Season 2, Episode 5. It's called Valhalla. So, full spoilers for the episode, as always. So, after a much controversial review of Episode 4, it was...
Was it?
Yeah, there was some comments disagreeing with us. But, we came into Episode 5, after a few days away from it, because it was the weekend, we didn't have time to do any of the episodes, and you came in kind of fresh. All right, new week. Let's sit down, watch 5, and have a nice sort of fresh slate, and try and just take it in for what it is, and see what comes out. And I do think this episode is better than the last one.
I agree.
By a fair margin.
I think it has my two favorite scenes of the season are in this episode.
I think that's fair. I'd probably say my favorite scene of the season is in this episode as well. It does suffer some of the same problems, and it does have at least one moment kind of similar to what's been annoying me with some of the episodes, where something that felt like it was teased for some sort of payoff ended up just being someone mentioning it and going, yeah, that's the thing, and then and what I'm talking about is Lila, maybe questioning if the handler was lying about the Swedes knowing why she was there and what she was doing and blah blah, and it's like, okay, that's going to have some sort of big dramatic payoff where she's going to find out it's going to be a beat, and it ends up just being her. They didn't know what I'm here for, or do this. Like, nah, I lied, and then they just kind of keep going, and it has no effect whatsoever.
It's the fact that she's immediately like, so let's carry on with the job. You got what I wanted.
Yeah,
and she's just like, yeah, here you go. What? You're not annoyed at her? Be angry.
It's one of those things. It feels like it was nothing, and I find that frustrating. But this does have a bit more of the charm, and I will say the show benefits greatly from having all the family members together.
I didn't realize how much the group chemistry was essential.
Yeah, to the point where when they all split up again. I mean, they all didn't split up completely because we still had the grouped
larger
up a little
groups.
bit.
Yeah.
But to the point where when they were starting to leave, some of them were starting to Luther was leaving and Five was trying to stop, and then he gets sort of splintered off into the Lila stuff. Where I was like, no, don't stay together, because.
There's a moment after the group meeting where Ben is sat on his own, and he just goes, "Oh, I miss this." I'm like, yeah, I miss this bit too.
He says, "I miss you guys," which is particularly notable because Klaus lies and says ghosts can't time travel, and it cuts to Ben at the corner being like, "Seriously?
Yeah,
I'm here. What are you doing?" But no, them meeting up again and all that, and some of my favorite interactions of the whole season were definitely this episode. It was Klaus randomly in the scene where they're all together. When they find out there's an apocalypse happening again, he just casually says, "Is it Vania?" And they're like, "Oh, come on, dude."
Yeah, there's the moment when they're all getting together at the start, and Allison's hesitation when she sees Vanya. Before Vanya comes in for the hug, and there's just the hesitation, the moment of fear, I guess. That she can't help herself because of what Vanya did to her.
Yeah, and then even later again, Klaus just kind of listing the romance history of the family in front of Vanya and her reacting.
That scene in the salon with the three of them.
Yeah.
That was the moment where I was like, no, this is what the first season had. The family dynamic, the charm, the acknowledging just the weirdness of it all. Yeah, you had a song going and the dancing.
Yeah,
it was like, yeah, that is what this season has been missing.
Yeah, I didn't so much care for the dancing in this particular case that much. It was fine. I wasn't annoyed by it, but I didn't necessarily get as much out of it as some of the scenes in season 1. But the actual dialogue beforehand, though, was fairly good. Klaus going through the romance history and just casually dropping that Vanya's last love interest was a serial killer.
And her looking at Alice, and Alice's like, later.
Yeah, or even when Vanya's having to explain the Alice and Luther dynamic. And she's like, wait, aren't we all brothers and sisters? And she's like, well, technically. And Klaus saying, if you're using the word technically, there's already a problem.
Yeah. Do you know what is particularly glaring about this scene? In a way that highlights a problem from, I think it was by the last episode, the episode before, is there's a strong parallel with, okay, they're all drunk here, and they're all kind of having fun, between this and the scene with Luther on the laughing gas.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, this is what it's supposed to be. And this is when it feels right. Whereas that scene was just irritating and kind of grating.
If this does sort of keep improving, or if this at least is now the standard for the rest of the season, it is going to make me sort of look back at the first 4 episodes and wonder like just how much of that had to be there, like how much of that
kind of makes you more annoyed at it in retrospect. And like we wasted so much time.
It just, I don't know. We have to see the rest of the season before we can make any sort of like statements on that. But
yeah,
at least this felt notably a step up from at least the last couple of episodes. I mean, 1 got away. I mean, well, actually, that's not true because 3 was probably the best one before now because it had the best dramatic stuff in it. But I think 2 and 4 both suffered a fair bit, although the problems were more glaring in 4 because, again, it was kind of that repetition and compounding. 1 got away with a lot, though, because it was the first episode and it was introducing everything. This one, bringing everyone back together, seeing some interactions that we've not had at all season. Now that all know what's going on, like one of the most frustrating things that felt repetitious between season 1 to season 2, because the premise was so similar, was 5 going around saying, hey, the apocalypse is coming in 10 days and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't need to hear him tell that to everyone that again. Like, I don't need that this time. It's kind of grating.
I mean, 1 or 2 of them, I liked seeing the reactions being when it was so different, like Luther, for example.
Sure, yeah.
But a lot of them, when I think like Klaus is just like, what again? I'm like, I mean, his is played more for laughs, I guess. But Diego, being like really into it, like, okay, I don't really need that.
Yeah. So, even Diego and Allison, like where Allison sort of forces him to say hello, just again, different interaction.
It felt natural. There's just there was all this charisma in the room, the chemistry bouncing off each other, and it came alive a little bit for a few minutes.
Yeah, but it does have the contrast where it made me realize just how dead the other stuff is and feels.
Because up till this, like I was still liking the characters individually, right? For the most part, it had we've talked extensively about the problems, but I still liked the characters. But because we hadn't seen them all together this season until this, and it had been over a year since I watched the first season, I'd forgotten the group chemistry. I didn't realize I was missing it so much until it showed me here, and now I'm like, I like those episodes less now without that.
Yeah. Plot wise, I mean, the subplot I'm going to tackle first because it has my favorite scene of the season in it, which is basically the handler sending a fake message from the future to go after Diego so they can lure the Swedes into a trap. There's a mine next to where they've got Diego's knife that they stole in a tree, and it blows up one of the Swedes. And that's a funny scene.
Just a little bit of it, like up to the shin left.
Yeah. So there's a foot just sitting there, which is amusing. That's not my favorite scene, though. That's not the scene I'm talking about. That's just the setup for the scene that I want to say I love. Now, I'm not a fan of Vania's plot that much still, right? But it does kind of lead into the scene that I like later, where she storms out the house and like Hello starts playing, but it's just a piano, right? And it goes longer because if you're familiar with the song Hello by Adele, like it has a couple of piano notes and then she starts singing. This kept going with piano. I'm like, this is like a different version, but it's just instrumental maybe without the singing. And then of course the singing started and it was like different. I'm like, wait, is this Swedish?
Yeah, I don't even have to check. I'm like 100% sure that of course it's a Swedish cover.
Of course it's Swedish, but it looks like there's an asteroid or something, like a meteor above Vania's head when it goes up to the sky. And like, what's this? What's going on? And then the flame lands in like a little boat with just the foot, and I'm like, wait, is this a Viking funeral? And obviously the title of the episode is Valhalla, which I didn't, before I watched it, it didn't occur to me why it was called Valhalla. And it cuts over to the other two Swedes at the end, and they've got like a bow and arrow with the flame, and I'm like, is there a Swedish cover of Hello playing as they're giving a Viking funeral to a foot?
Yes.
And all of a sudden, I'm like, why was the rest of the season so boring? What, when I could be having this? Why was the rest so boring?
On top of that, this had the best action sequence of the season as well. The fight with Five, set to the cover of Bad Guy. I'm like, sure. Okay, it had an energy to the scene that previous, I'm thinking the fight scene with Diego and Hargreaves, which was okay, but it was a bit hidden in the dark and whatnot. And then we had the fight scene the whole way last time, which was fine, but they focused too much on the dramatic choice that wasn't ultimately that interesting and didn't have the energy to the fight. This one did. It had the flow to it, and you had it set to the music, which again, I don't just mean it's set to a good song, but it's got the energy to it, which is what a lot of the first season had in those sequences. And it was like, okay, there's something here. It's just so frustrating that we have all these these three great moments in this episode, like the back half of this episode, I'd say. And I'm like, why was the rest of the season up till now not this? This is what the show excels at.
Yeah, and even Diego and Luther being together and kind of arguing about their philosophies. And obviously they get the invite from their father to come to an early supper, or a late supper it was.
Yeah, the flashback with Luther was like, yeah, whatever.
Okay, yeah. The pogo one at the start was fine, I thought, but the one with Luther was, I mean, obviously it served a purpose, but it wasn't that entertaining to watch. But no,
did it serve that much purpose?
Hold on a second. What I really hated about this note that he gives them, this is not a critique of the show, this is just a critique of how it's written, and it annoys me, is 7:30. Who says 7:30? No one says that. You say 7:30 or you say 7:30. You can say 7 o'clock. No one says 7:00 o'clock.
Yeah, is it an American thing? I don't know.
I think so.
I've something that always seems weird to me when I've heard it in American movies and shows is saying like 15 past or 15 to, and not quarter past and quarter to. Well, I don't know if it's like a...
Well, that's just because quarter isn't as commonly used. Like,
right. Because
a fourth is also said sometimes by Americans. Not always, but sometimes.
Yeah, I know, but it always just sounds wrong when I hear it. So, and I'm wondering if this is the same thing where to us it sounds wrong, but maybe it's not.
Yeah, but all these other things we're talking about, I've heard over and over again. I don't think I've ever heard this before. It's weird. Yeah. Honestly, I mean, the best way is just to say 7:15 or something like that. You don't have to say anything else. Nice and easy.
Yeah.
It's fine. But yeah, 7:30. I think it might just be a time thing. This might be like an old-fashioned thing rather than a cultural thing. But
could be.
It stuck out to me, and I'm like, I hate that. I've decided in this moment, and the millisecond of hearing it come out of their mouth, I have decided that I hate it.
I agree. It's another thing to add to the list of things I don't like about American timekeeping, or the
well, you don't know
nomenclature around it.
Yeah, but you don't know this is an American thing, though.
Well, I'm adding it to the list now anyway.
You're just assuming it is.
Yeah.
If anything, it sounds like the sort of thing a pompous, like, old Englishman would say anyway. I have no cultural reason to suspect this is an American issue. If anything, I suspect that this is snooty old English people who think it's proper English. And maybe it is proper English, but you know what? Do I say it proper English? I say F you. Shove it up your ass. I'll speak how I want.
Do you know what? For a second, I thought you were going to get like particularly Scottish or something, just because, and then you didn't. I was like, oh, that was kind of mild in comparison to what I thought it was going to be.
I don't know. It's just I disapprove of 7:30.
Yeah, no, I find it weird. Like, I'd say the vast majority of people in the UK have, like, you know, their phones and such set to a 24-hour clock.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we don't talk in 24-hour clock. Like, no one's, you know, like 1600 hours. We don't say that. We'll still say 6. But the actual digital clocks are almost universally set to 24 hours. Whereas it seems most Americans just use the 12-hour clocks still, at least from what I've seen. And it's another one of those things that is just strange to me.
People in the military are used to it because it's military time, but it's not commonly known. So there is a lot of people who are just not used to dealing with it.
Right.
I think it's just second nature to us, where it's like we can just look at 1900 and go, that's 7 o'clock. We don't even think about it.
It's not even like a conversion of it, because all public clocks, like if you're in like a train station or something with a digital time board, it will be in 24-hour military time. But no one here would call it military time. It's just time.
Yeah, it's just time. So yeah, that was that. So some other plots. Vania. I think Vania's plot frustrates me a little bit. Now, some of the comments have implied that her plot will seem more connected. And to be fair, this episode does kind of tease that, because they're kind of going through like how everyone might have affected the past, which might lead to the apocalypse. You got Allison in the civil rights movement. You got Klaus starting a cult. You've got people connected to others, right? And like Vanya kind of points out, well, I'm just a nanny on a farm, and I'm like, okay, so clearly there's going to be a reveal later like why this might actually be relevant to history, that she's interacting with these specific people. My problem with Vanya's plot is, even if it does end up being super relevant later, it feels so irrelevant actually watching it now. I don't really care if it's relevant later.
I think you can do that if you put teasers in there, but there's been nothing to kind of string.
You don't even need teasers. It'd be fine if it was just compelling to watch. The reason why if I was enjoying it for what it is, it would be cool when it links in later. But because I'm not enjoying it really at all, I don't really care how much it's linked in later. And it's frustrating because obviously she wakes up with Sissy, whose name I now remember because she said it like 5 times in this episode. And they have this romantic moment in the bed, and they have to rush out because the husband's home earlier from his trip than they thought. And it's just frustrating because when Vanya says to the others, "Oh, I'm going to tell her I love her," or whatever, you know exactly what's coming. You know she's going to go and make this big confession of love or want to run away with her, like they were talking about, and you know Sissy's going to be like, "Well, no, I need to play the housewife, and I can't do that," and and goes even further with it in the fact that they've had like a romantic night, so clearly her and her husband have been spending time together, and it kind of hurts Vanya. All the beats that kind of happen later in this plot thread in the episode, they're all things that you feel like the most obvious things to expect, and there's nothing to them that was exciting, or I don't know. I felt frustrated by it because it felt like just an inevitability that didn't seem that engaging. But
no, I'm with you. You mentioned that moment where they're talking about how they're all connected to things.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's Diego saying, "Oh, look, we're all connected to JFK," and he brings up a couple of examples. I think he brings up, Luther's working for what's his name, and
yeah, the gangster did, yeah.
The gangster. He brings up Luther. He brings Allison protesting the government, and then like his is very tenuous. It's just, well, I'm going after JFK. I'm going to save him, and that's like. If that was like more of a choice rather than kind of this coincidental thing. Klaus is like, well, Klaus started a cult. I'm like, yeah, exactly. You're stretching already on there. Vanya, he just doesn't even mention, just completely brushes over. Because he implies it's like, oh, it's like this destiny thing. We're all drawn to this. It was meant to be, and it's like he didn't even try with some of them. I'm like, you're not making a compelling argument there, dude.
He's trying his best. He's so in a rush to like make a point that he's jumping over. He's making leaps.
yeah.
I can't argue with that necessarily, but yeah, and I just it's such a like, yeah, and like I feel like one of the things that I should be feeling with Vanya as well is that this sort of heartbreak sort of moment she has when she storms out the house. Should I not be worried that she might end up, going boom, like essentially? Should that not be like a concern I have? Because I never even really.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Occurred to me.
I feel like we should be in the idea that if this relationship goes south and it hurts her and she gets jealous, loses control, we should be scared that that'll happen. But it's not. I don't know if it's actively not trying to do that, so it's fine. Or I'd say fine, or if it should be doing that and it's missing the beat, or if it is trying to do that and we're just not feeling it. I don't know which is worse in that scenario.
Yeah. Elsewhere, we mentioned 5 getting after Lila, which ultimately just ends with the handler coming out and revealing that she's there.
You got us.
Yeah. So obviously part of her plan anyway, and so that's there. We mentioned Diego and Luther getting the invite for the light supper. I love the disgust on Luther's face. Light. I'm a big boy. I don't do light suppers.
Yeah, that's the thing in the comics in this season, because the comics are going to split into like separate mini series. So the season's going to work so that they do the thing where you've probably noticed in the season he eats a lot.
Mm-hmm.
They did the he got fat thing over time. They chose not to do that in the show because they didn't want people to compare it too much to Fat Thor.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
They thought that's a bit too close. People might just think that we're just copying that, even though it was in the comics, to be fair. So they just kind of put in the idea of, no, he just eats a lot and he really likes food, but
I'll
we're
be
not
honest,
showing it as much.
9 times out of 10 when they do like a sort of like someone got fat with like makeup and fat suits stuff, like it 9 times out of 10 I was like shit. So I think
I assume that was part as well.
Yeah.
And that's why you need the dedication, like in Always Sunny.
Where the actor actually gets the. Well, this is the weird thing though with Luther, is that so much of his body's not real anyway.
Yeah.
Because it's I don't know if it'd be classified as a prosthetic necessarily, but he's got something on.
It's highly padded suits.
Yes, with some, and obviously when he's topless, maybe a bit more makeup to like connect it up better and stuff. But, yeah. So, it's funny. It's probably this episode in some ways has less plot happening, and yet the few plot things that advance forward also make it feel like it advances the most in the last several episodes. Obviously, in the montage at the end when the Adele cover's playing. Allison has decided, from earlier, she's going to tell her husband everything, so assuming she's about to do that. Klaus is with his cult, and
yeah. Did you find it a little bit weird that no one addresses Klaus's drinking? Like, there was a whole thing at the end of last season where he came back and he was clean, and it was like, such a big deal for him as a character, and yet now he's off the wagon, he's drinking, and everyone's just like, yeah, of course he is. Let's all have a drink together. Like, this is weird.
It's a bit odd, yeah. So enabling your brother who's clearly got an addiction problem, and was very proud.
And they all know this.
Yeah, and it was very proud that he was clean. But they're all just miserable enough that they're like, yeah, that's just good.
I kind of liked the moment. I think it was last episode where Allison just put the blanket over him on the sofa when he turned the house, because it was like, no, she can't help it. It felt bad for him, and she's been doing it for years. And then the next morning she's like, oh, you're not drinking that swill. Come on, I'll make you something better. And then they're all just drinking for the rest of the episode. I'm like, this feels a little tone deaf.
Yeah. And also getting tacos, which they glossed over. We never actually saw the taco eating. Just
Does that disappoint you? Do you know what? It is a little strange given how much they have shown Luther eating.
Yeah, I was expecting some tacos. Like, not that I expected were different in 1963, but
I mean, tacos are tacos, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think I've ever heard anyone talk about tacos in this time period. Like, I don't think any period movie I've ever watched has had characters getting tacos. So I guess the novelty of 1963 tacos was interesting. I feel like when you're doing food in this time period, now admittedly Luther's been eating a lot of various shit that's not been this, but when you're doing food in this time period, it almost ends up always being like steak and potatoes or something akin to that. It's traditional, just home cooked meal stuff.
Yeah, kind of Americana.
Yeah. That said, though, the nerd tech guy did have some sort of weird Jello thing this episode.
Yeah, I don't know what that was all about.
That was a weird sort of. It was there for a joke or whatever, but I just kind of like I had forgotten that it happened until we started talking about food there, and I was like, oh yeah, there was that weird Jello scene.
Yeah.
Where they were all just kind of looking horrified at having to eat some of his Jello.
Yeah, it was a bit weird.
But yeah, never trust Jello. Food should not move on its own. That is my stance on that.
It's a terrible stance.
Oh, what food do you like that moves on its own?
Jelly, obviously. Prime example.
Jelly's the worst. So
I love just eating raw jelly cubes. It's the best.
That has been our discussion for episode 5 of Umbrella Academy. So if you thought we were too harsh or too negative last time, I don't really take anything back that I said last episode, but I do think this one was better. Still has some problems, but definitely more scenes that feel more like the show that we liked in season 1.
It's funny how this episode is better, that it makes me like the previous episodes less. I have more complaints in hindsight.
Yeah, I mean that's a possibility. So hopefully whatever momentum it's gained with this episode, or at least whatever energy it's gained in the scenes themselves with the characters, can carry forward, because that was one of the biggest problems I had, was just feeling that there was no energy in any of the scenes. Hopefully that can carry forward, going into the back half of the season, and maybe why everyone's saying this is a better season that I was seeing on the internet over the last week or so. Will even if I don't agree with it, maybe I'll see why people think that, given if the back half is notably more consistent.
It's true. People I have found are very forgiving of seasons if it gets good by the end. Like there's the notable exception, example for me was Game of Thrones. Like season 5 is where I originally dropped off watching. People were going, what about Hard Home? Like, it was like episode 8 or 9 or whatever. They're like, it's the best episode of the season. It's one of the best episodes of the shows. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure it's a very good episode, but I don't want to watch through 6 or 7 episodes of shit first. It's not worth that much. And I feel like maybe that's going to be the same situation here, where maybe this could end up, have a great back half, but ultimately, it's probably not going to be enough to, be really into the great territory of as a season because of the first half.
Yeah. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. So that is episode 5 Valhalla. Let us know what you thought of the episode in the comments below. Please do liking on YouTube is really important. It is a nice, easy and free way to support everything we do, and it will help us find more people. You can also support us financially over at patreon.com/mailedfuzztv for as little as $1 per month, and get some bonuses for your troubles. So go and have a look. Get us on Twitter at @mild_fuzz for channel updates and whatever else. But otherwise, that is us. Thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?